This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All righty, there he is. If we only had a couple things to talk about in basketball today. Ira Winderman, how are you doing, my man? You doing good?
I'm doing good. I'm going to give a preemptory for people, anyone listening to the podcast before 6 p.m., maybe a little after. As we've already learned, don't believe everything you hear or see reported. Everyone on this NBA beat is out to get their scoops, and then sometimes you wind up with your oops. And the first one already happened. Yeah, I like that. The first one already happened where there was a report the Heat were going to meet with Jalen Brunson, and all hell broke loose. And then we get an update. There is no Heat meeting with Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson didn't schedule with the Heat. The Heat didn't schedule with Jalen Brunson. And what you wind up doing on a lot of these is getting the pushback because teams realize it gets players and other teams thinking. In this case, Big O, all of a sudden we were trading Kyle Lowry. Well, Kyle Lowry sees that. And he's like, what the bleeping F? You're getting a point guard? Then the Heat has to get in touch with him. His agent has to massage all of that. So, yes, this is the most fun league, I believe, when it comes to Twitter and rumors and personnel. But stuff changes. And folks, there is nothing more important today than constantly refreshing your Twitter, because what you might see at 6:17 might change by 6:19, 6:41, 7:30, or Friday morning.
All right, so let's get to, and the Brunson thing didn't mean any, it meant, it had no sense to it. Like there was no rhyme or reason to why the Heat would bring it in. Now, the report was that Brunson's reps were the ones that asked for the meeting, which was kind of crazy. Whatever it is,
but you know what, Big O? What I do is when I get a piece of meat, I try to figure how I can cook that. If I need to fillet it, if I'm going to grill it, if I'm going to cook it in the oven. So what I was thinking of, okay, Jalen Brunson to the Heat, you're sending out Kyle Lowry. What else can you do? And I'm like, well, how about Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson for Jalen Brunson and Dorian Finney-Smith? Then you have your defensive four to move into the mix. So again, a lot of this, that didn't happen. But there's going to be a lot of part two. And the reason I bring this up, and I know you were going to talk about it, even the DeJounte Murray trade with Atlanta and San Antonio is not done yet for this reason. You can expand trades, make the money work. So John Collins is still in the mix, not to San Antonio, but maybe to team number 3, including if the Heat lose PJ Tucker, maybe the Miami Heat step in and said, okay, let's see how we can make this whole thing work into a 3-way deal. So a lot of times you'll see something you think is team to team, A to B, and then all of a sudden C and D jump in. As you know, Big O, we've been through this for years together. The math and the cap can get awfully complex, which is always why it's a great thing to have Andy Ellisberg on your side.
Okay, so walk us through, as the Heat Nation, on what's going on with the PJ Tucker situation, because James Harden opting out, and then now the follow-up report that he's willing to take a little less to give them even more cap space, which means they can sweeten that deal for PJ to make sure they lock him in. So if Miami cannot retain PJ Tucker, then John Collins becomes a guy that could be available, because I doubt the Hawks are going to pay Murray and Collins overall. So I would imagine that Collins gets into play. And then also in Milwaukee now, Bobby Portis has opted out of his option too. So now he's a free agent. Miami could be interested in a Bobby Portis, who also can shoot the 3, by the way. So walk us through this whole dynamics of what is the priority. By the way, Jay Crowder is another one that is also being mentioned for Miami.
Yes, I'm going to go backwards.
So walk me through all these options. If we don't keep PJ Tucker, what is that other triangle of options for them?
The people I have spoken to now said if PJ Tucker leaves, that put Jay Crowder number 1 on your list. Phoenix has a lot of contract stuff to deal with, including DeAndre Ayton or other moves with that. Jay Crowder's in the final year of a deal. They have a lot of good young players they're looking to play in those positions. So ironically, the 3rd year of the contract that the Heat would not sign Jay Crowder to because they thought they were getting Giannis could come full circle. That's where they put Duncan Robinson into play, possibly a 3-way deal, send out Duncan's $18 million, bring in Jay Crowder's $10 million, wind up still in a good place against the hard cap. That's a strong possibility. I would put that as my number one option if PJ's lost. I'll walk you backwards.
Okay.
Bobby Portis was what you were going to see across the league. Guys who opt out simply to get a better deal. Bobby Portis is staying in Milwaukee. Big O, I would be shocked if he doesn't. I'm not saying it's not a good name for the Heat. It's a great name for the Heat.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go above the taxpayer mid-level. They don't have the wherewithal for that. So I see Bobby Portis saying, so many guys who opted out. James Harden opted out, he's staying. Bradley Beal opted out, he's staying. Bobby Portis opted out, he's staying. You see this all over the place. They're just trying to get long-term deals. So I think Bobby Portis is there. What James Harden did, this notion that James Harden is giving money back, these guys don't give a plug nickel back. What he's doing is, and don't listen to Nickelback either, and what he's doing is he's taking the money on the back end. He's getting years. So yes, James Harden, he's a saint. He's giving up $10 million a year. No, he's not.
He's giving up cap space here early.
Yes, he's giving them more cap space here. And when he's 52 years old and still playing for Daryl Morey in Philly, he'll get his Udonis-like money back on the back end. What that does is put Philadelphia below the luxury tax threshold, allows them to pay PJ Tucker the $10.5 million taxpayer non-taxpayer mid-level. This is how insane this world is and how much ego has to do with it. PJ Tucker, when this whole process started, said, I want me a $10 million contract. And you and I talked about this on our Acura Pembroke Pines report on Monday. We spoke about it with Clay Ferraro on our Slomin's Home Security Inside the Paint on Tuesday. The Heat can craft a package almost identical, starting with PJ Tucker's non-bird $8.6 million exception that the 76ers can with the $10.5 million mid-level exception. No income tax, state income tax in Florida, a nominal state income tax in Pennsylvania. But PJ simply wants to see his salary listed as $10 million plus. PJ Tucker wants to be listed as a $10 million player. So I have sat here in Winderman Casa, slamming my head against the wall. Doesn't he get it? He's in a good situation. It won't snow here in February, and he'll wind up with almost the exact same amount of dollars. In fact, with an opt-out in the third year, for full bird rights, he could wind up with more than $10 million a year. And all he's doing is sitting there with his PJ Tucker-like smile going, nah, I want a contract that starts at $10 million. And the Heat can't do it. And it's freaking infuriating. It's an ego thing. PJ Tucker wants to step on the court for opening day in October for his team and puff his chest out and go, I'm a $10 million player, because God forbid he's listed as a $8.3 million player. Life wouldn't be the same. I don't know. And this is where the Heat are. The Heat are throwing their hands in the air. They had to get permission from Mickey Arison just to go 3 years out to when PJ Tucker will be 40 years old. They did it. They said, PJ, we went to our owner. He greenlighted this. 3 years, fully guaranteed $27 million to a 37-year-old power forward. We're the best, aren't we, PJ? And PJ said, yeah, I want $10 million a year to start. Big O, I don't know. It's like someone telling you they want $1 and you telling them, here's 4 quarters, and them going, no, I want $1. And you're like, ugh. I don't know.
All right. So we talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the show, the DeJounte Murray deal. And I threw this out there. So Tyler and 2 first rounders wouldn't have been able to get that done? Or is it because what you told me last night, they're more into clearing cap space and acquiring picks than anything else?
They want to move their cap back. So you bring in a player like Tyler, boom, you have to give him the massive extension. You wind up capped. They're playing for this French big man, number 1, who's seen as, and this is ironic, Big O, the next David Robinson and the next Tim Duncan. That's what the Spurs do. They build around a talented, skilled big man. They're going all in on the number 1 pick from the player internationally ranked as the number 1 draft prospect next year. As you know, even the worst record in the league only gives you a 14% chance, but you build up a few more first-round picks. Maybe you trade 2-3 of them for another lottery pick. You enhance your chances. That's where they're going. But
I hear they have 11 first rounders over the next 7 years.
Yeah, they're basically turned into the Thunder. You know, they've taken the Thunder approach. It seems like if you play in the Southwest, that's what you do. So I understand that. But Big O, I want to walk back our text string from last night. I'm not so sure the Heat were willing to give up Tyler Hero for DeJounte Murray. Now, you might go to me, wait a minute, Ira. DeJounte Murray's already an NBA All-Star. He is a #1 kick-butt defender, but he can't shoot. And the Heat like shooters. And the Heat need scorers. And the Heat know they can get defenders because they always have gotten perimeter defenders. But Tyler Hero is a special player with a special skill set on a team that has long struggled to create offense.
Right.
So I think the Heat are looking more at Tyler Hero's regular season, at his possibilities. So basically, let's throw the draft choices aside.
If Butler was a dynamic shooter, then you can bring Murray in.
Yes.
But because you have two guys that are probably, he's a younger version of Butler that he's probably going to need to attack the rim more, even though he did shoot 36% 3 years ago from three-point range. Then he went 31 and 32 the last 2
then
years.
Teams start defending you when they see you can do something. So I think that's what it comes down to. Look, it was a fantastic name for the right price. I agree. I think Atlanta got a steal, although you don't see teams give up unprotected first-round picks. That all of a sudden, this reminds me back to what
they're not going to be in the lottery. They're going to be good enough.
Joe Dumars thought that 1 year, and he wound up giving a first-round pick in a trade with the Grizzlies at a time.
I mean, if injuries can do it, but I mean, if they're healthy, Atlanta should be a decent.
But it just takes one bad season among the two when they gave their unprotected first-round picks. That's a currency you very rarely see traded. Even Boston, when they made their trade for Derek White, made it #1 protected. #2, you can have it. But #1,
but Ira, you're not giving up anything. Gallinari is nothing but
he's a buyout. He's a buyout who could wind up with
so you're getting a guy that averages 21, 8 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals. Yeah, you have to give him up unprotected. You have to, because they've got to hope that one of them ends up being a high pick.
Right. Or really, and what you're doing is making sure that your team is really bad this year. If you traded for Tyler Hero, you might be less really bad. It's the bizarre world, and I've always felt this way. If a team is going to flat out come out and say, we're not playing to win, you damn well better discount your tickets. What other product says, hey, we're releasing this movie this week in the fourplex, and the movie sucks. Now play full price. Only in the NBA. NFL doesn't tank to this degree. During a season, an NFL team will start to tank when they realize it's going in that direction. Only in the NBA, I think of any sport, there's a team from the start saying, man, are we going to be bad this year? And the Spurs will be.
All right, so let's tell the Heat Nation. The Beal stuff is dead. Is the Donovan Mitchell stuff?
No, that's very much alive. Okay. That is very much alive. I don't know what the hell Utah's doing. It seems like they're bringing in the Friends Club. You have Danny Ainge bringing in a Boston Celtics assistant coach. You have Dwayne Wade bringing in David Fizdale in the front office. It almost seems like they're playing basketball team that having any sense of continuity. So they're 50% Celtics, they're 50% Heat, and there's not a lot of jazz left in there from what was built by the previous regime and coached by Quinn Snyder. Yeah, and Big O, this goes back to the story I wrote at the Sun Sentinel today. This is why the Miami Heat do not want to be hard capped. When you are hard capped, it is much harder to make a mega trade. A mega trade in the offseason, a mega trade before the February NBA trading deadline. So the Heat's thought is this: PJ Tucker, you're terrific. You would have been great to have, but you're not worth giving up the chance for Donovan Mitchell. You're not worth giving up the chance for Kevin Durant. Because if this goes to crap in Brooklyn and Kyrie doesn't show up, because he was scared by a neighbor's Halloween costume and needs 3 weeks off to recover, then all of a sudden Kevin Durant's going to go, get me the hell out of there, and start averaging a Harden-like 8 points a game. So the Heat don't want to be hard capped. This is not Mickey Harrison saving money. This is flexibility, that they could make a blockbuster, that they could throw Duncan Robinson and Kyle Lowry and other contracts in August, September, December, February, make the mega deal. And I agree with the Heat approach. You do not hard cap yourself for PJ Tucker at the expense for the 2% chance at Donovan Mitchell, for the 1% chance at Kevin Durant. Andy Ellsberg's a smart dude. He's not going to put himself in a box when he doesn't have to. The Heat have been hard capped each of the last 3 years. 3 years ago, because they got Jimmy Butler in a sign and trade. No issue. Last summer, when they got Kyle Lowry in a sign and trade. No issue. 2 years ago, when they got Avery Bradley and Mo Harkless above the non-taxpayer mid-level, yeah, a little bit of an issue. I think they learned from that. For elite, you go hard capped. For anything less than elite, you sit back, you let your fans deal with it, and you move forward.
Well, the craziness starts at 6. Like, when should we know about Donovan Mitchell if that's a possibility.
Donovan Mitchell won't be a today thing. Donovan Mitchell won't be a this week thing. Donovan Mitchell will be reading the tea leaves. Wait a minute. They let Royce O'Neal go? Wait a minute. They're trading Rudy Gobert to the Bulls. We're going to have to read the tea leaves, Big O. And then Utah will recalibrate and going, okay, we got this for Royce O'Neal. We got this for Rudy Gobert. Now where do we go? Then we'll have a better read. Again, I love free agency.
At that point, you're going to have to trade Donovan Mitchell because he's going to look around and say, what am I, part of a rebuild? I got to get the hell out of here.
Yes, but for what? For picks, which the Heat are limited in, or for players, which the Heat might be able to offer, three-way trade, that Tyler Hero? That's what you have to wait and see is what they're going to get. I love that we call this tonight the start of free agency, but it's really the start of the personnel season. And trades, I believe, because of the craptastic free agent list, are going to be more of a factor in teams reshaping than free agency. Another name, Zach LaVine. I think he's staying with the Bulls.
Oh, yeah.
He's at the top of the list. Matter of fact, I have a list at sunsentinel.com of the top free agents. And I think my top free agent listing right now is James Harden, Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine, and going down there, I think the top 5 guys I have listed are all expected, except for DeAndre Ayton, to go back to their current team. And if he doesn't find an offer sheet, he's going to have to go back to the Suns, if even on a 1-year deal. Keep an eye on the trade market. Folks, when you're scorecarding free agency tonight, also say to yourself, how could this impact the trade market?
All right, what else are you working on in the Sun Sentinel so folks can check you out, my friend?
It was a little thing last night that the clock took care of, and not the Heat. But at the stroke of midnight, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, and Omar Yurtseven became guaranteed for this coming season. And like I spoke to you earlier this week, think about that. For $5.4 million total, they have 3 rotation players. And that eases the Duncan Robinson contract. And that eases some of the other bad math. That is genius. That is genius. You cannot spend $5.4 million better. You know those things you get on Twitter? Pick someone from column A, column B, and column C that doesn't cost more than $5 in fantasy. You can't add 3 players together more than Max Strus, starter, Gabe Vincent, playoff starter, Omar Yurtseven, emerging player, likely rotation player, for $5.4 million. Wrote about it at sunsentinel.com to start my Heat notebook. But again, whenever people lament to the Big O and go on the chat board here, the Heat missed that, the Heat didn't do that, keep in mind what the Heat have done with their development program. It really has been remarkable. And the cost efficiency of that has allowed for the missteps every now and then.
Yeah, no doubt about it. They've done an awesome job of being able to unearth talent. That's why I'm actually intrigued next week, the Summer League, just to go see some of the new guys and go, what? Who the hell
and some
is
of the
that
old
guy?
guys. Keep an eye on Marcus Garrett. I spoke to Malik Allen yesterday, and they are really encouraged by Marcus Garrett coming back from his wrist injury. He was under contract at the start of last season. Matter of fact, let's see if you remember. 10 straight shows, I talked about Marcus Garrett and compared him to a former Heat player. 2 of them. Which 2 players did I compare him to?
Well, I know that when we were talking about Marcus Garrett, the Caleb Martin thing was also going on, that we were talking about guys that can help out the Heat.
But especially 2 dogged on-ball defenders.
Yeah, Briante
Weber.
Yeah, and the kid from the Clippers, Beverly.
Patrick Beverly. And if you can get a dogged on-ball defender like that, there's always a place for that in your rotation. And a matter of fact, Big O, we're going to talk about this around in Vegas. I think the Heat have so many young, intriguing possibilities, maybe even Haywood Highsmith. You and I will have to debate again, and I know it's hard for Heat Nation, the Udonis Haslem roster spot. Do you give UD the spot over a Highsmith? Do you give him the spot over a Marcus Garrett? Do you give him the spot over an Orlando Robinson? Summer League will tell, but I think the Heat, for all their win now stuff, are going to have a really nice developmental program.
I'm with you there. Follow him on Twitter at Ira Heatbeat. Catch his work there at the Sun Sentinel. And then you can catch him next week in Vegas and right here on this platform. Ira, have a fantastic weekend, my friend. We will catch up next week.
No 2,500 women for me. Thank you, Big O.
You got it. Later. So Ili Nastasi beat out Ira Winderman is what he's saying. All right, there you go. That's our Acura Pembroke Pines.